All right, welcome back to the Reverse Selling Podcast. Today with me, I got my good buddy, Mr. Jared Wright, the owner of the Share Group. Jared, welcome to
What's
the show,
up, everybody?
friend.
Thanks for having us on, Brandon. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. So listen, I want to talk about something I think that for the real estate agent community, Jared, we don't talk a lot about, and that's picking a niche. You know, there's all these cute sayings out there like riches or niches, but it is true. I mean, if
niches
you look
get
at
stitches, oh no.
There you go. Exactly right.
Right.
But the reality is like, if you look at every other industry outside of the real estate agent community, if you look at doctors, lawyers, I mean,
Right.
people are specializing in a niche, and the more specialized they are, the greater their income is. And so I want to bring that thought, Jared, to the today's episode.
Yeah.
And communicate to realtors the value of going out there and mastering a niche. And there's nobody better at it than you. I mean, you are the owner of the Share Group, and what you guys do is help agents specialize in not only picking a niche, but getting the actual leads to go out there and start communicating with that niche.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just going to say that's kind of how our relationship was formed based off of our niche, right? Something you've been preaching even before the times of the absentee owner, but that was our flagship niche. Because of the way that the data is licensed and how we intertwine it, it really does allow the customer, a lot of accessibility to different segments. And when I say different segments, even putting a property value range or restriction is something that could help within your niche, right? And so it eliminates what your size of home, what's your specific. But yeah, niching is something that's kind of how we built our company. And in all honesty, we're really good at finding those highly motivated off market homeowners that are niching to be motivated to sell.
Yeah. So that's what I want the whole episode to be on, Jared. So I want to give the real estate agents some context. All right. So
right.
I think traditionally what real estate agents do is like a lot of them will circle prospect. They'll just kind of canvass a neighborhood. They'll cold call a neighborhood. They'll make just listed, just sold phone calls. They'll send out postcards to random people. And so I want to get a little scientific, and then we'll have some fun with this. And hopefully people will really, really have a huge aha moment, I hope, in their business and in their career. Right. So there's a process in the wild called natural selection. Okay. Mm-hmm. I talk about this in the book that I just wrote. You guys can get that on Amazon. There it is. There it is.
Yes.
I love it. I had to, dude, that's a shameless plug, but I had to plug it.
I love it. I was just telling Drew, we were asking for the audio book because we want to get our sales guys dialed in on it, sooner than later too. So yeah, it's a great plug, brother.
Yeah, it's coming soon. We're working on the audio version. We're already working on version 2 of Reverse Selling, how to sell anything to anyone. So that's for all salespeople. But that's another episode.
I had a light bulb moment, dude. I mean, just trying to fathom what reverse selling really was, and I mean, you hit it right on the head for just how I am, who I am, and how we sell. It's just amazing, to be able to provide a value, right? to earn the business.
That's right.
It's kind of a no-brainer, I think, but I think it reads so well, man. I love it. So
good. I'm glad you like it, man. I can't.
I don't read books either, by the way. I tell my kids I watch Netflix to read. So
that's right. That's awesome. So let's talk about this niche thing. So so there's this process in nature called natural selection. It's how hunters hunt, essentially, right? And so what they do, and so we can keep it moving forward, is the hunter will look for its weakest prey. And I always tell the story, Jared, when I'm teaching in front of a group of realtors. I talk about how lions hunt, like the antelope that cross the river, right? So you can picture this in your mind. You probably watched some Discovery Channel at some point in your life. And what do? Well, they just sit there. They don't even get up. They're laying down as thousands of antelopes are crossing the river, right? It's not until something happens, Jared, that they actually get up and get excited. And that thing is when they identify the weakest link. Now, I know it's sad, and people listening to this podcast might be like, oh, that's so sad. I get it. but they're picking a niche. They're saying, okay, instead of going after all of the antelope and catching zero, what's the highest likelihood that I'm going to eat and get fed? Well, let me watch and see what is the weakest antelope crossing the river. And that's the one I'm going to go after. So now we take that same approach, Jared, into real estate. Instead of a realtor calling random homeowners in a neighborhood, we don't know if they're going to sell or not, right? That's like chasing all the antelope. The work that you and I do together, and certainly the business model that you make a living off of, is trying to identify which homeowners have the highest likelihood to sell a home. Would you agree?
I would totally agree.
All right, so let's get into some nitty gritty. So did that little analogy make sense to you?
Makes complete sense. And I'm probably the antelope crossing the river late, the old guy that maybe they're hunting on here pretty soon. But
there you go. Well, and that's, I mean, the funny thing is like most real estate agents, it's like, well, hey, what do you specialize in? They're like, specialize anybody that's looking to buy or sell a home. I'm going to do that, which I understand. But what we're talking about is this. Let's get really, really tactical here. So we're talking about working with a company like yours, potentially, creating a list of prospects who we already know before we call them, before we go knock on their door, before we send them a piece of mail, before we send them a message on Instagram, that they already want to sell, or it's likely that they want to sell. So here are some examples. I want to talk about this. Certainly your claim to fame are absentee owners, right? We'll talk about each one of these niches in a second. But that's only the start. I even like creating list of homeowners that have a home that's free and clear. Been there for 20 years or more. They've had a major life event, or they've recently become empty nesters, or they've recently retired. I mean, the likelihood of these people downsizing is so high. So now the first time a realtor hears this, Jared, like, holy shit, that's a great idea. Instead of me just calling random neighborhoods, cold calling all day, why don't I get a list of 500 people that meet that criteria? So let's talk about that a little bit. And maybe, how you guys are able to create those lists.
So some of the segmented niches that we've created, obviously the elephant in the room, or the lion at the river, is the absentee file. But for us, the other niches that we have a lot of success with is like a likely to sell category. And so what we're able to do through the transactional record and the demographic record is create a multi-sourced, selection based off of equity, length of residence, age of the homeowner, size of home, a number of children, age of children. So we're able to kind of put together, a very targeted niche of people that are likely to sell based off of how long they've been in their household. From there, we've able to kind of, a lot of the same concepts that we tell our customers to target is, don't come off the message of what you're the niche you're going after per se, but we're able to target distressed homeowners too. Same kind of category. They still want to see a fair offer for their property, but we're able to predict if their income has changed in the last 12 months, or they're upside down on their mortgage. And so a lot of realtors might want to specialize in that niche. We segmented off of that from a bad credit. So it's kind of like a pre foreclosure database, trying to build and nurture those leads a little bit before everyone else that hits that pre foreclosure, kind of world. And then the free and clear that you talk about, but then the most popular one, the biggest exciting one, I think for us, is where it's, evolving to, where a majority, I think, of the purchases throughout the year are going to head, is that downsizing, that baby boomer, that senior market that's really going to start to be a majority of these transactions.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm most excited about too. I know you and I are probably known most for talking about absentee owners, but really where the biggest where the biggest opportunity is that demographic you just said. And in our episode next week, you and I can talk. We'll go super deep on that downsizer opportunity. But you're exactly right. I think what we need to do is, again, I think a real estate agent is going to find that if they specialize in one of these things, where they know how to position themselves, Jared, to stand out from the crowd, to be the obvious choice because they've specialized in this niche. It'll be a lot easier for them to find opportunities, generate leads, get listings. And then when they interview to get these listings, it's so easy for them to convert because they can communicate with a homeowner unlike any other agent is able to do. So as an example, let's talk about the divorce niche for a second, right?
That was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. I mean, let's think about this for a second. I mean, you can work with a company like yours and we can go and get files for people that have filed for divorce, and we can communicate these to these folks because the likelihood of them selling their home and buying a new home, it's probably like over 90%. Right. And in all the divorce attorneys that I work with, the stat they give me is over 80% of all divorces end up with a property being sold. And so here's a specific opportunity for a real estate agent to go into, let's just say, a city, and instead of calling or knocking on doors or sending mass mailers to random people who we don't know if they're going to buy or sell ever, why don't you go and get the 500 people that just filed for divorce in the last 30 days and call all of them? Your likelihood of running into somebody that's going to move is just so much higher.
So much greater. Do you, what do you tell your students? How many niches do they need to have in their tool belt?
3 to 5 lead sources. That's what people, that's my recommendation. No less than 3, and 5 is plenty. Like if you have 5 lead generation pillars and you have a strategy for going after all 5 of those, I think it's plenty.
Is it like going to the Cheesecake Factory menu where you're like, open that thing up and it's like 75 pages of your niches?
Right. Well, and that's a great point. You know, it's like, I think realtors that they hear me on this podcast or they watch one of my YouTube videos and they're trying to go after all the niches. Like that's not the point here. Would you agree with that from like a sales and marketing perspective? Like, would you agree conceptually with what I just said, as far as you don't need to go after 500 niches because you're not specializing in anything? That's the opposite approach of what we're talking about.
Right. There's a book, another book I read, the second book I read besides yours as being the first, but it talks about like people not being good at multitasking or maybe over niching, right? So specialize, figure out what your specialty is, what you speak well, with, and build off of that and become that, quote unquote expert. I mean, just because of Father Time, we at the Share Group have become, a group of database experts, but we've been doing this a long time. So I think as you build your niches up, you can really specialize in what you're good at and what you're comfortable with. And then you kind of just rinse and repeat,
Well, yeah. I mean, the opposite of niching down and spreading yourself thin, I mean, that's the opposite of niching. That's a generalist.
Right.
So if you look at like the general practitioner, like the doctor,
right.
I mean, dude, they make like 80 grand a year. You know what I mean? They don't make anything in comparison to the brain surgeon who's making millions of dollars. They do one thing.
Right.
And so most realtors cannot fathom this, Jared, because we have to bring up the scarcity mindset in this podcast. It's like, well, if I niche down, what about I'm losing out on all these other opportunities? This is like most entrepreneurs, by the way.
Right.
They're so scared to go to a specific niche because they see opportunity everywhere. I have this conversation with so many people every single day. Right. It's like, oh, I want to start this business. I want to start this business. I want to have this. I want to have that. It's like, dude, if you do all those things, you become a general practitioner and your income goes down because you're spreading yourself thin. It's like the little game we all used to play, probably not a nice game, but like you take the magnifying glass out on a summer day and like it hones in all that energy like on an ant and like
flame up.
What?
We burn it up,
but we burn it up. We burn it up. And so like that's what we're talking about. So like hyper focusing on one tactic or strategy will allow you to, like, if you niche down, you can blow up your business.
But it's not that easy though, too, Brandon. When you think about it, I mean, look at me as a database, guru. We didn't niche down to real estate until 4 or 5 years ago, and we were niching in insurance and auto and timeshare. And so we were this data general practitioner, and now we're figuring out that you need to be very niche specific and hone in on what you're good at. And that's kind of what we're trying to practice, what we preach too. So it's just kind of cool.
I mean, and so, all right. So now once hopefully people are they've opened their eyes to like specialization, right? If people would take that advice, it's a lot easier to go out there and generate business that way. Because imagine a world you say, well, I give lists to everyone, like as a marketing message at the Share Group, you would get no one. You know what I mean? You would get nobody. But when you can say, hey, we provide the best quality listing leads to real estate agents, that marketing message becomes so much stronger in the marketplace. Would you agree with
valuable? That? Absolutely more valuable. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know,
solving the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think the next step is once a real estate agent says, okay, I'm going to pick this niche, now they would contact somebody like you, create this list, and now all of your messaging, all of your scripting, all of your marketing lead generation efforts can be honed in to communicate with a certain demographic that is much more likely for them to respond to, because you nailed it. It's solving a specific pain point. So going back to the divorce niche as an example, there's thousands of them, but imagine you communicating with a list of 1,000 people that are going through divorce, who are looking to sell a home, and they need to understand the process of divorce real estate. Or we take the downsizers, the senior who's now an empty nester looking to downsize and looking at a strategy specifically to help those folks. You know, how have you guys taken, I guess, the approach of like, okay, you've got your specific targeted demographic and how we're going to go market to those folks?
Right. So, and we try to, you know, take it as a case by case conversation. You know, what market are they in? What value are they able to add, you know, to the prospects that we're able to provide? But I mean, we have over, you know, 250 to 500 different demographics that are available on the data. So, I mean, you can.
So say that one more time so people got it. How many?
250 to 500 different demographics. I mean, I can send the data dictionary of, it's amazing within the different data feeds that we get, or the demographic information that you can really niche. I mean, specifically, if someone wanted to focus on Spanish speaking in Miami, I mean, we could even filter with ethnicity, you know, or what they're comfortable with. There's a guy that I have in Reno that wants conservative individuals, like, you know, kind of the right wing side, and he had multiple listings from the list that we customized based off of what he was comfortable with. So, getting on the phone, building you know, that conversation to build those niches. I mean, they're outside of some of the ones that we're talking about, or what we've segmented based off of, you know, what's going on within the times. And I think the data that we have and the different feeds allows us to kind of segment and niche based off of people's specialties, I guess, or their experience.
What would you, I mean, for the real estate agents who really get it and they say, I get the value of specialization and niching down, what is the most popular? Is it still absentee owners?
Yeah, absentee is kind of, like I said, we hang our hat on that. And so that's kind of where we focus. That's our niche, you know, to the value, and just because of the times. But the likely to sell, we have a kid, he's 20 years old, and like outside of San Fran, 20-year-old real estate agent that gets 3 to 4 listings every $400 he spends, and he loves the likely to sell. And so I think the likely to sell works. You know, you got to be careful on how you pitch those distressed, those bad credit, those divorced. But if you have the same, you want a fair offer for your property, you know, pitch, then you're going to have successes with any of the, you know, the niches that we've created. And I think that's what's, you know, we kind of put our money where our mouth is. We wouldn't really pitch a niche without knowing we've had success with it.
Yeah, and you guys that are either watching this replay on YouTube or listening to this on a podcast, we'll link to the share group so you guys can work with Jared's team specifically to start to create some of these lists that we're talking about. Because the question I get all day, every day on Instagram is, where do I get these leads? Where do I get these leads? And it's like, I can only say the share group so many times. So you guys, I'm going to link to the share group beneath this video. But what I was going to say was, the thing is, when communicating with a specific niche, I think you brought up something really important. And I get a lot of questions about this. It's like, okay, well, I've got a list of people that have, let's just say, filed for probate as an example.
Right.
You know, you don't necessarily bring this up. Like somebody that's going through a divorce, maybe even so, you don't call them and say, hey, is this Jared? Jared, I see that you just filed for a divorce. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is communicating with a homeowner the same way you would any homeowner. The only difference is all the people you're contacting, the likelihood of them looking to sell. That's the difference.
That is the difference. And it's such a value add, and it's such a small difference. We had a lady that bought a distress list, and she called us and was appalled her friend was on that list. And she's like, it would have ruined my reputation if I called her. And we're like, what were you going to say to her? You know what I'm saying? Like all you were going to say is like, would you like a fair offer for your house? But she just didn't understand the concept of, like, she took it to heart what we were probably, you know, pitching or providing, but it was just kind of learning experience for us,
Well, yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. I think people are really, they're just not, they're missing this. They're this point, like it just screws up people so bad. To your point, it's like, dude, you were going to call 100 random homeowners and use some type of script that says, hey, values are at all-time highs.
Right.
If you could get a great offer on your property, would you consider to sell? They got no problem with that. Random people. What we're saying, I think, Jared, is like, well, instead of calling the 100 random people, why don't we give you 100 people that are likely to sell? Use the same script.
Right.
And then the amount of people that say yes to that question is a lot higher when you have a targeted list. That's what we're saying.
That's exactly what we're saying. I love it. There's another lady that gave us some feedback, and she was, she's like, I had a couple of bad numbers, and I was like, well, how many did you call? She's like, well, first of all, I did get one listing, and I'm like, well, that's really good. How many did you call? She said 100 leads. And we're like, what? That's really good. It's just funny to set that expectation of these people. And a lot of your students, and I bet a lot of your growing pains are these, startup agents that you have to, teach them to take that cold shower and create that mindset. Right. And that's what I'm preaching to my people is mindset's such a powerful tool, man. So
it's all mindset. And that's a future episode for sure. Just talking about mindset. But like, I think to kind of put a bow on this thing, it's like, this show is all built upon how do we give the best tactics and strategies from an advice perspective. So a real estate agent has the best chance of going out there and securing new listings. And the takeaway from today's episode is if you're going to go do the work anyways, and the work meaning you're going to call people, you're going to knock on their doors, you're going to send them messages on Facebook, you're going to send out direct mail, you're going to do Facebook ads, whatever it is you're going to do anyways, all Jared and I are recommending is that you put that message in front of the right audience. Right. And I think people listening or watching this replay can conceptualize that. We just want to bring this message to this community of agents that I think is really missing the boat on this. And that's why I'm so thankful to partner with people like yourself, because you're the one that puts this into action to make it happen.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, and food for thought down the road, like I said, for another topic too, is like, once you have that database of niches built, how do you maintain and keep it updated, from an address perspective and a database enhancement. And there's some other things that we can kind of educate these guys on. And I love the fact that you're out there helping, and that's exactly what we want to do, is to be able to help. So, being a part of this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So, dude, I appreciate you coming on the show like always. And looking forward to our episode next week. And if you guys have recommendations or things that you want Jared and I to cover on the show, just use the comments section beneath this video and let us know which topics specifically maybe you're struggling with that you want Jared and I to spend 20, 30 minutes going deep on that will help you overcome those challenges. Jared and I would be happy to do that. So appreciate it. I'll link up to all of Jared's team's information beneath this video to the share group. The point is niche down to blow up your business. Get out of this mindset of being this general practitioner. That doesn't mean that if you get a referral from somebody outside of your niche, you're not going to sell them a house. It just means you're going to focus your energy and your attention with your lead generation going after a specific targeted group of people. So the likelihood of you securing a new listing is higher. Any last pieces of recommendation, Jared?
No, that sums it up. I think I heard it, recently in a podcast. I think niches get riches, I think is the right term to have. Right. And you paint the great picture with the general practitioner analogy. And I think that's an important thing to have in the back of your head.
Cool. Well, my brother, I appreciate it. Make sure you guys that are watching this, tickets go on sale today, actually, for our first live event to the Reverse Selling Summit in October 28th and 29th. So make sure you guys grab your tickets for that. Come hang out with Jared and I live in person. Come learn the best tactics and strategies in the industry to go out there and build a great listing business. So we'll see you guys on next episode. Appreciate you guys listening and watching.